lazy girl job. Have you heard of that?
A lazy girl job is something that you can basically quiet quit. Honestly, I get a lot of comments that are like, oh, easy for you to say about quiet quitting. Like, I have a real job. And it's like, I get it. And also, there's a lot of jobs out there where you could make like 60 to 80K. So like pretty comfortable salaries and not do that much work and be remote.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Growing Together podcast with me, Sunny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
A podcast where we talk about everything under the sun related to growth and becoming the very best version of yourself. We're back with another episode and more consistency. I think we just got, life gets really busy.
It does.
And crazy, and even like when it comes to doing this, like we love doing this podcast, but it can be difficult to figure out a good time to not just record, but to edit and to like post, given that me and Cesar both work full time and our jobs can be, demanding.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I think we've worked it out now.
Yes.
I feel like we would do a couple episodes and then something would come up and then we'd do another couple episodes and skip some because life was just crazy. But now, it's still crazy, but we're figuring it out, and I think that we're getting better balance in our lives. We started running again. Cesar and I are training for a marathon. I think we mentioned that in the last episode, but just gonna mention that every episode
until we get a marathon, until we get through
yeah.
that. So,
which has been difficult. In itself, because we hadn't run in such a long time, and I think we were pretty consistent in the month of July of running 5 to 6 times a week, and then we've been consistent in August so far. So yeah, it's not for the faint of heart though, because we have to run in the morning since it gets so hot towards the end of the day.
Yeah, in the afternoon it's super hot. In the morning it's nice and cool. Usually there's some clouds sometimes if we're lucky.
Yeah, so you're not just in direct sunlight dying as you're running down the street as me and Cesar do. But today the topic of conversation relates kind of back to a trend on TikTok. And it kind of reminds me of the episode we did on quiet quitting. This was I think maybe over 6 months ago, probably. And it's something called lazy girl jobs. Have you heard of that on TikTok recently?
No, I haven't.
That's so crazy. Again, we just did an episode on the algorithm. I think that's telling of what the algorithm shows
what it's feeding you and not me.
Yeah. But essentially a lazy girl job is a satirical way for a younger generation to give the finger to critics who label them as lazy because they refuse to succumb to the mental health problems they have observed in generations preceding them. The lazy girl job is basically doing your job, but you're not what people would consider a career girly. You're not career girly. This applies to men too, obviously, but they call it lazy girl jobs because the girl who came up with this obviously coined the term.
Yeah.
It's essentially you're doing your 40-hour work week, and your job's basically not I guess they're kind of shaping it as it's not the most difficult job in the world. It doesn't require a lot of expertise, or it's kind of something that you could make a good salary at, and there's not necessarily a need to or want to move up.
Are these jobs that you would most likely be replaced by AI in the future?
No.
No,
it's just it's also, it's not just the job, what the job is, it's also what it means. It means not working, not, I guess, slaving away to your job and giving your job all your time and all your hours. It's more about balance and having work-life balance and understanding that your job, you're working. It's funny because it has the term lazy in it, but the reason it has the term lazy in it is it's because I feel as a society and older generations tend to look down on individuals who merely just want to go get a job for the paycheck and nothing else.
Yeah.
They're not really wanting to move up. They just want to provide for themselves and clock in and clock out. In reference to work, looks down on people who don't necessarily want to move upwards in their career. They're happy with where they are.
Okay, I see. So it can really apply to plenty of jobs. It's specific.
Well, yeah, it can apply.
Thing.
It can apply to any job, but then there's also, there are jobs that you would take that will require, some require additional hours, or it doesn't give you that benefit of just clocking in and out.
So it's not So it sounds like it's more of like I mean, I guess it could be salary or hourly, because if you
No, it is salary usually.
it's
Like
usually
you're making a
okay,
salary.
okay. Huh. Interesting. So who started this trend? Was it just like some people started talking about like lazy girl jobs? Like what is a lazy girl job? Like,
So from what I understand, there's this girl on TikTok. I think her name's like Gabrielle Judge.
A lazy girl job is something that you can basically quiet quit. I honestly get a lot of comments that are like, oh, easy for you to say about quiet quitting. Like, I have a real job. And it's like, I get it. And also, there's a lot of jobs out there where you could make like 60 to 80K, so like pretty comfortable salaries, and not do that much work and be remote. Most of them are non-technical tech roles. So I'll give you a few examples of like practical stuff here. Marketing associate, some type of account manager, as a customer success manager. That's a very good lazy girl job.
But she started to talk about it in the sense that, again, just kind of changing the way work works, that you don't have to be someone who wants to like move forward and putting in even if you just put in 40 hours, like that's not a bad thing, but it's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's very much so just, again, like about balance and how you see work, how you envision work going. I think, we come from generations where in order to be successful in your career, or to be seen as successful in your career, you have to be the first one in and the last one to leave. And like you're dedicating your life in hopes that like there's some reward at the end of it. And I think the idea of a lazy girl job is that some people aren't willing to commit their time and their energy because at the end they might not win. There might not be that like prize at the end. It's just not worth it for people it feels like they're putting off enjoyment now in hopes of enjoyment later.
okay, I see now. I see that
Yeah.
now. Okay.
It's just funny to me that it's called lazy, because I don't think it's lazy to just want a means to live without like wanting to do much more than like the 40-hour work week,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what do you think? What do you think about just like a clock in type of mindset? Clock in, clock out type of mindset?
I mean, it really all depends. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, what is the person, that the individual person, whoever it is, that is wanting that sort of, quote unquote, lazy girl job or boy job or whatever, right? Because it can really apply to anyone. It's not just, for whatever reason, it's weird. It's the girls that are, it's interesting. But I think, it just depends on what someone wants out of their career or their job, right? I mean, for whatever reason, the first thing that comes to my mind is it's just like retail jobs for the most part not to say that certain specific jobs are lazy girl jobs, but because you can also, you can build a career out in
But
retail.
we're talking like corporate lazy girl jobs, like not like retail.
Yeah, I know. Like, I feel like I need more context here. I need more.
What do you mean context?
Because like I guess you can really again, just like you said earlier, is that you can, any job can be, quote unquote, a lazy girl job. It just depends on how you apply yourself in your role, right? So if you get hired on for a role and you do the bare minimum, it's similar to, obviously, like you said, like quiet quitting.
But no, so that's the thing. It's like that's the disconnect, is that someone who just wants to work 40 hours a week isn't like unmotivated, or it's not that they're not applying themselves. It's that they're choosing that like, you're paying me for this much work. I'm going to do this much work, but nothing more and nothing less.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's not that they're not applying themselves. It's that like they're essentially doing what they were hired to do, and nothing more than what they were hired to do. But I think the problem that arises with that from like employer's standpoint is like, employers don't benefit from people who don't want to overachieve, who don't see like growth, because like obviously employers want people who are gonna like push their business forward. And I think the idea and misconception is that people who want like these so-called lazy girl jobs aren't motivated individuals. And it's not that they're not motivated. It's also not that they're not good at their jobs. They could be great at their jobs. But it's that they have that boundary of like, you're paying me this amount for this amount of work, and that's what I'm going to give you. But other than that, like, I'm not going to give you any more of my time. I think it's interesting because like we don't like shy away from like rewarding someone for like working extra hours, but we always have something to say about someone who just does their job and nothing else.
I mean, and not to say obviously it's a good thing to have someone on your team, especially if like, you know, obviously like not this, like let's say like this, not let's say, but like this podcast grows into like a big business where we need to hire like editors or maybe individuals who will look for trends and topics that we can discuss about that, like continue to blow up this podcast. Like, of course you'd want someone that could, you know, in a sense, like go above and beyond, not just what they're hired in regards to what their role is, but then it's always good to have people that like want to continue to grasp for more because they enjoy it. Not to say that someone who is only doing exactly what is, you know, detailed in 40 hours isn't doing that. I guess there's more when you can tell or see or notice someone going above and beyond what their, you know, job description is. Like getting uncomfortable and doing something that maybe they're doing it as an extra thing, like to look like maybe to get more experience in their field.
I 100% get that, but I think of when you were saying that, I thought of something that it's actually funny because your brother sent this to me like the other day on Instagram Reel, and I was like, this guy was working at this company and he was a super, super valuable asset, like to the point like he was doing the role of like multiple people as like one person. And when it came time to like promote somebody, it wasn't going to be him because he made himself too valuable in the current position that he was in to be promoted. And I think that's interesting too, is that I think when you're working a job and you're trying to, you know, make a name for yourself, and you're trying to, you know, make yourself a great asset, sometimes you make yourself like, you put yourself in a position where it would be hard to like actually move up just because you're actually really good at what you do. And like it would hurt the company to have to find someone to take your spot.
So wouldn't the better thing to do be basically train someone up to do what you do and then obviously move up in the company?
No. That's the right approach, right?
Yeah.
Someone shouldn't be like not promoted simply because they're just really great at what they do. But the problem with that is like, it may come down to hiring more than one person, which is expense to the company. And training, a lot of times, the reason people look for like a certain amount of experience is because they estimate that they won't have to teach them as much. That time it takes to teach for some people is like, you know, time is money. And I think that happens. And so like I can get like the people who are going above and beyond sometimes also aren't getting that reward at the end. You know, it's just, you're hoping, you can never predict like how it's going to turn out for you. Obviously you would imagine that there's a correlation between like working really hard, putting all these hours in, and where you end up in your career, right? You would think so. But sometimes like it doesn't. I mean, I've been in positions where I felt like I was working insanely hard and I had like all the numbers to show it, and when it came like my annual review, it's like when it came to my raise, it wasn't reflected. It can make you evaluate like, wow, like I just gave all my blood, sweat, and tears, and this is what I have to show for it, you know? And I think it's the idea of like just protecting your time and your well-being too. Because there's a whole mental health aspect of it too, of like a lot of people, I think there was like surveys done, like Gallup surveys done in like 2022 of like how many people actually felt engaged in their job and how many people actually felt burnt out. And a lot of people do feel burnt out because we have that culture of like, you need to like prioritize work over everything. And it's ironic because like most of our jobs, obviously, I'm not talking about like nurses, doctors, anything like that. Most of our jobs like aren't like where we're putting out these big fires, you know? Like it's not like our jobs don't mean the end of the world, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like it's not like we are regular people doing some pretty regular things.
Do you mean like a hypothetical fire, or do you mean like a physical fire, like an actual building fire? Like
No,
when you
I'm
say,
like
yeah.
no, but like I mean like at the end of the day, like I'm not saying our jobs aren't important. They are, but a lot of our jobs aren't life or death.
Oh yeah.
Whether that
like,
email
yeah.
gets sent or not, it's not life or death.
I understand. I mean, I get I get what you mean by
Yeah.
that, but if, I mean, it could also affect your job if like a certain email isn't sent.
No, and
type
I'm
of
not
thing,
saying it doesn't
right?
have an impact, but it's funny because I think we, in our roles, obviously there are things we have to do, there are things we have to get done, and there are consequences when things don't get done. So we obviously should work to get what needs to happen to happen. But in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of the world and like what we do, it's not the worst possible thing. They're like the consequence of it not happening isn't the worst possible thing.
Oh, like worst. I mean, and when you say the worst possible thing, you mean like someone.
No
like,
one's gonna die.
No one's
Like
gonna
no
die.
one's gonna die. Like and it's like it's not. That's what I mean. It's like it's
That's what you
not
mean,
life or
like,
death.
it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's all-
But like there
yeah.
are situations where obviously things are of great importance. Like okay, I need to do this because if not, we might lose this client, and that's money, and that's not just like it doesn't just affect you, it
Yeah.
impacts the people around you. So you do have to think about the impact it has on other people around you because when you're working at a company, it's like a collective effort
Yeah.
essentially. So, but it is funny because there's a sound on TikTok like you are a regular civilian, act like it, and it's like it's funny because we put so much like we use the term I feel like it's a very corporate term of like a fire drill, like oh it's a fire drill, we got to get all hands on deck, like all those kind of things when something like crazy happens. And in that moment, like you don't think about how in your role obviously it is important, like in reference to like what you do in context, all of that, but it's not a real fire, it's not we're actually putting out fire like
I mean, in a
everything's
sense, you're putting you're putting
it's
out a hypothetical
yeah,
fire.
but it's
yeah.
it's funny because we are just
Yeah.
regular people, and it's like I don't know. It's kind of a joke of like this is not as serious as we make it to be. It's not that serious. In any role, there are some very serious things that you have to deal with, and consequences to actions, and all of that kind of stuff. But if you think about like really high level, some of the things that like we stress over or that people get upset about, or like, oh, this wasn't done. Why wasn't this done on this day? It's not that serious. But like we have to take our jobs very seriously, obviously, because we want to be seen as professionals and all of that good stuff. But the other thing is that lazy girl jobs tend to draw a line between self-care and sweat equity. So like going too far or working too long and compromising your mental and physical health. It involves a sustainable awareness of work-life balance and setting boundaries on how much you're willing to invest in your career at the expense of your well-being. I think it becomes a game of where you have to pick and choose what you want in this life, which in my ideal world, you can have both, right? You can have a like very successful career, but also balance in your life. But I think some people feel like you have to pick, like, I can either have like this balance I want, or like I can have a career. And I think that's kind of also where this comes from, is like, it's okay if you don't want like that, like aspirational career and you just want to be able to live.
I think people obviously have the right to pick and choose what they want out of their life, and obviously, for the most part, unless you're like filthy rich and have a ton of money and they don't have to work like a day in your life, then that's something different. But for most of us, we have to have a job or obviously or something that's leading to like a bigger career move or whatever the case is, in order to really, grow and learn, and obviously like whether you want to have a family or not, like those sorts of things. So I think it's important to, in a sense, like sweat equity. I know you just brought that up. I think for the most part it's important, but again, I guess it depends on what you're putting yourself through and if you can handle it. Because I think it's there are certain roles and jobs that not everyone can handle, right? Like not everyone can handle being, and talking about like, physically demanding jobs like a firefighter. Like you need to be a certain like physical fitness, or a police officer, or a doctor,
But that's
like
what I'm saying.
things
Those are like
that.
very serious jobs.
Yeah.
But in the context of like corporate
Yeah.
America, like we're not fighting fires, we're not saving lives. Like and yeah, you do obviously have to like decide what you're willing to do, and the reality of it is like some jobs are going to be more demanding than others, and some jobs are going to have other different requirements that you're either okay with or you're not. And
Yeah.
I think we're going through a time period where we're really evaluating what work looks like and what
Yeah.
it should look like. And I feel like that's a conversation, and I don't know this because obviously like 10 years ago I wasn't working. Well, 10 years ago I was 15. So yeah, I didn't have a job yet. But I think more so we keep on bringing up the conversation about how work should be given, how times have changed. And it's funny because I think like older generations are like, this is bullcrap, this is crazy, why did things have to change? But it's like, well, things change because the times change and everyone's evolving, and we have to adapt as people with it in order to, when I think about a company, ideally you want to maximize productivity, and the way that you do that is to have happy employees who are passionate about what they do and feel like supported by their company. And I think that's the other thing is like people out there that don't feel that. They don't feel like the company really cares, and the company kind of shows it in like the benefits they offer, or like, lack of trust. There's a lot of companies that just don't trust their workers, and there's like a lot of micromanagement, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's just this conversation we keep on coming back to of like what should work like, and what is it like, how do we change the way that we work and still accomplish the same things, I think the fear on companies' parts is that it's gonna impact like their bottom line, if like they give like, for instance, even like with people, a lot of companies still like not a lot of them offer like unlimited PTO, but why don't you want people to feel refreshed and like they can take a break? Because don't you think that would make people more productive if they knew that like they could take a break now and then, and they could have some time to recharge? But I think companies just see it, companies aren't people first. That's the problem. It's like companies really aren't people first organizations. They're focused on profit and revenue. And obviously, I understand, gotta make money, gotta keep business going. But like, I think there's a better balance of how you put the people in your organization first, because they're the ones keeping it running, keeping it going.
Yeah, and I mean, for the most part, historically speaking, companies, like I'm talking about like going back even way back, like 1900, 1800s, like the first, companies, or like, I forget the name of the India trade line or whatever it was, where they would, had ships that would trade between different countries, and they brought certain things, like, and that was like an actual business. A guy owned it, or multiple people owned it, and they made a ton of money off of it. And that's obviously back then it was like, no, you have to like work, or you'd obviously probably, or you would probably even die on the ship. You think about it, because you're on a ship out in the middle of the ocean, it could like just sink or whatever. So I mean, I can understand that. Yeah, it's the bottom line can tend to be first for most organizations, because that's what's important for them to obviously keep the ship afloat. And when you think of like a ship as a business, and there's people that work on the ship, there's different like tiers of who, the captain, and you have the sailors, or the people that were running the using that analogy of running the sails. Like that person needed to know how to do their job, or else like they won't be able to go in the right direction. So,
it kind of reminds me of when we're watching the show Silo. Everyone has their job in the silo.
Oh yeah,
and they all work together, and they're all like most of them would say like they're equally important. Like the government would say every job is equally important because they all keep the silo running. But obviously, some people see their jobs as more important because if they don't do this is like a domino effect of like the impact. I think it's interesting though, because the girl who came up with this term, lazy girl job, she said that, this is like a quote from her, she's like, it's an anti-hustle gig. Back in the day, you would be like the first one into the office and the last one to leave. She said that she deliberately chose the term lazy to describe the anti-hustle ethos from the perspective of a toxic job environment, not because she thinks workers seeking lazy girl jobs aren't motivated or hard workers. She says everything that she's talking about here is considered lazy if you compare it to toxic corporate workplace expectations. So like if you compare it to like what the like previous expectation that was being held in like toxic workplaces, yeah, it looks lazy because like everyone is doing much more and you're just doing like what essentially the bare minimum to keep your job. But it's not lazy. It's literally you're just doing your job. And then she said she wants to promote awareness of this alternative approach to work. And then she was like, but she literally told people not to brand themselves on social media because she didn't want it to lead to repercussions in the workplace. Like, oh, don't go on social media and say, I have like a lazy girl job because then, imagine how that looks to like the workplace.
Employers
the
too,
employer,
they're looking
and
for
like,
exactly.
and which is crazy. Obviously, we live in a time where like your employers are going to see that stuff. Your employer, like, especially if something blows up on social media, like the likelihood of it getting back to your employer is very high. So you have to be careful with how you approach those like conversations and how you share that with other people. Yeah, but it's interesting because I think it's important too because we do have like this hustle culture too of you gotta hustle and like you'll sleep when you're dead type thing. And I feel like I understand both aspects, right? Because I consider myself highly motivated individual. I want to be successful in my career, but I have experienced burnout before, and your mind kind of plays tricks on you too, because I think, am I lazy because I'm just tired? Am I lazy if like I just want a day off? Because I have this idea that I should be able to function at 100% of the time, but that's just not reality. Especially if you're not working if you don't have a good workplace environment, the likelihood of you being able to function at the highest level isn't going to be high just because you're constantly, pushing yourself past like, your own boundaries. And even like, so I would say that the place I work currently is really, really great. And their whole motto is changing the way work works. And I think that's important for companies to kind of take a hold of that and kind of follow suit because, again, happier people are going to be more likely to do better jobs. And the whole thing that like our company says is that like they're not worried about how the job gets done. They're just worried about that it gets done. It's an issue if the job doesn't get done. Obviously, that'd be an issue anyway. But if the job's getting done, who cares how you got it done? It's done. So I think that's something that's that I've kind of loved. That was honestly one of the main reasons I wanted to work where I work. I wanted to grow because I thought there was a lot of opportunity, but I also wanted to see like how I could have a different relationship with work because I feel like I had a very toxic relationship where it was everything and I had no time for anything else. I couldn't do anything outside of work I was just stressed all the time about work. And that's not good for like your physical health either, because during the time that I was like just killing myself for my job, I wasn't doing any exercise because I felt like I didn't have time. I probably wasn't eating the best I could because I felt I didn't have time to cook myself meals. It's just a like domino impact of how it affects like your physical health and your mental health.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not taking care of yourself, obviously it's going to affect everything that you do at work, right? Which is why, like, I find it important even more nowadays that we've been doing this to obviously work out and motivate. It pushes us to be better in our everyday lives, right? And then that also obviously ends up affecting how you do at work because you're like pushing yourself, you're motivating yourself to do like a marathon. In this example, so. And in your workplace and what you do at work is also going to obviously be affected by that because you're like, I'm going to push myself to these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny to me though too because I thought like when I thought about this conversation, I just think that there is such a great generational divide in the workplace. Obviously, like I don't know, do you work with a lot of like older people? Like would you say like your workplace is pretty distributed between like Gen Z, millennials, Gen X?
I would say it's pretty evenly distributed. Maybe more younger people. Yeah, I would say more like younger people for sure. But Like, what is that? What is that? What would that have to do with the I mean, you said like the generational divide.
I mean, I think
so-
it's because, I mean, you kind of see how different generations approach
Oh yes,
work.
of course.
You know,
yeah.
how, like, some will stay all night if they have to. Others are like, well, I get paid till 5. Like,
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah.
I think too, like when you think about it, I think a lot of people think if you have this mindset, it makes you like a less valuable asset. But I don't think it does. I think it's interesting because, for instance, I think it was last year, the year before, we saw like the Great Resignation where people were leaving jobs because it truly was like a job seekers market, essentially. Like there were a lot of like companies needing people, which puts the power in the people looking for the jobs. They can be more picky with what they take. And we're still noticing too that a lot more people have kind of different standards for what they look for in a job. So when you're applying, a lot more people are looking for remote work because it's usually much more flexible. They're looking for benefits, like not just like traditional benefits, like the 2 weeks off a year, but like more PTO, flexible work schedules, even stipends, that comes into play. Like, oh, well, are you going to give me a stipend for like education? Are you going to give me a stipend
Equipment
for
or something like
equipment?
that? Yeah.
There's companies that do like mental health stipends. A lot of companies were transitioning like their benefits because they knew that that would help attract the best talent.
Yeah.
That you can get the best talent if you have the benefits to offer them on top of it. And now we're in more of a employers market where like employers have the power because there's a lot less jobs, but there's still people looking. There's a lot of people looking for jobs, so employers can kind of dictate like what they're gonna offer, and it's not as I'm not saying it's not important to have the benefits, but a lot of people still are just trying to find jobs, especially because there's been a lot of layoffs, and so there's a lot of people out there looking just for something in the meantime. But I think that given like when you hear this trend, like I think it's important for employers to kind of adapt and figure out like how to get the best out of their workers. And I think getting the most out of your employees goes back to the balance in their life, giving them that balance to have a life outside of work and to enjoy their life. Because I think about it too of what's having, like, for instance, say you make, we make, I'd say, a pretty reasonable salary. Like, and combined, we have a pretty decent income, you know? What does that matter if we don't have any time to ever enjoy what that income can bring us, What if we can never go on a vacation, if we can never, never do the things that make us happy, if we're just always working and don't have a time to sit and enjoy the life that we should be able to have because we now have the means to do so.
Yeah.
And it's also ironic too because nowadays it is, I think a lot of people justify, a lazy girl job because they define, for one, lazy girl job as like a job too that would probably pay around like 60 to 80K, and that's a comfortable salary for a lot of people.
I mean, I guess it depends where you live.
Yeah, it depends where you live. Obviously, if that's like in California, like that's not
That's not
comfortable
much,
at all.
yeah.
But it's funny because I think about it too of like, why, like, the thing is, my personality is like, I will work hard no matter what. Like, doesn't really matter what you're giving me because I just have that kind of mentality of like, I got to give this my all. That's the type of person I am. But I also do think about sometimes where I've been in a place where I'm like, I can't even afford a house. Like, we have to live in this apartment because that's what we can afford. It's like, but this isn't even providing me the opportunity I need to be able to move forward in my life.
Yeah.
And I think that's why some people are like, you know what, if this is going to be what my life is, like, if this is all that I'm going to get out of it, then I should, only dedicate the time, like, that I have to.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And the other thing I thought of too, and I think Kat, I don't know if Kat mentioned this on our Hot Ones episode or if we were just having a conversation, is that like literally no one will remember like how much time you spent at work. but like your family will remember like you not being there and you missing things.
Yeah, Kat said that. I remember that
And it sounds
conversation,
cheesy, but it's true because like literally I experienced that firsthand. Like with my parents were like always at work, and obviously too, this was a different time, and we needed money and we needed to make ends meet. So I understand that from like that perspective. But I remember like times where I wanted them there and they weren't. I think that's important because like especially like obviously, you know, I would say that other generations want us to have kids and, you know, but we want to make sure we shape our lives to allow us to like enjoy the time that we have. Like when we choose to have children, like can we enjoy the time we have with them, or can we be present for those moments? That's a huge thing to me, is like being present. Even you, like, you know, I'll get mad at you, like you'll answer like a work thing after hours. I'm like, we're doing something. Like, why are you like answering? Because like, you know, I get it because I'm also like kind of like, oh, if someone messaged me, I'd probably message back. But at the same time, you know, it keeps us from being present in like the moment, in the time that we do have to enjoy outside of work. That's just kind of what I think. I just think it's interesting because I'm sure in a couple months there will be another thing. There will be another thing that's essentially the same thing as like quiet quitting or
Lazy
or
girl.
lazy girl jobs. It's going to be another variation because it's still going to become increasingly important that people have that balance in their lives and that we're able to make a living but also make a life. I think that's the main thing, is that we want to be able to enjoy the life we have now. You know, there's that idea like, oh, well, when you're 65 and you retire, you have all this time to enjoy it. It's like, yeah, but then you're old and you're tired. You don't want to like take 16-hour plane rides. So like your 20s and your 30s are the prime time to have these experiences that, like, are you gonna go to a rave when you're 65? I mean, you might. I mean, you might do it, but like you're not gonna be in your prime years for that kind of stuff. Like, this is the only, like, for instance, this is the only year I'm gonna be 25. This is the only year I get to experience 25. And this might be the only year that I'm capable of doing certain things. Maybe like by the time I'm 30, I'm not going to have the fortitude to go out until 2 a.m. and like have like go on the town.
I don't think you have the fortitude to do that right now.
I really don't, but I would like the option. When you think of it in the perspective, like you only ever get this day today. Like I'm never going to have another August 6th of 2023. You know, this is when we're quoting this. It won't be published, but at least not yet. But when you take in that perspective, it really does matter because I don't want to wait until I'm 65 to feel like I can enjoy my life. You want to be happy kind of in the present moment. Like you've also got to do what's gonna make you happy, and kind of in a sense not care what other people have to say about it. You know. I think that's the problem, is that everyone has a say of like how other people work, you know, even though it might even not affect them. Like obviously most of what people do affects other people at their job, right? But like in the sense of your work's getting done and people are just mad that you don't put in extra hours because they do. It's like, well, if that's not technically required, then, you know, who are you hurting? Yeah, I just think it's just important to have that balance. I feel like I've spoken this a lot, but I just really favor having, you know, time. Even just like the past couple weeks, like, you know, I started this job, I think like 3 months ago, and I started to be able to have time after work to do things that I enjoyed, like reading again, or like when we have time to do running in the morning. And I know that like it's made me a happier person because I have time to do that, versus like when I didn't have time to do that, I was very depressed. I was very upset because I just felt like I'm doing all this work and what do I have to show for it?
Yeah.
What do I have to tell people? It felt like I had nothing. But, you know, now I can say like, you know, I not only have a great job, I'm moving forward in my career. I feel like I'm making great strides in my career, but I also have time outside of work to not just share that with people, but to like just hang out and like have dinner and not be stressed about the next day.
Yeah.
You know, that's all I have on this topic. I think it's interesting to see like what work will look like in the next 5 years and how it continues to change as.
Oh yeah, for sure. I just think about the past, like the previous 5 years.
Yeah. Especially as more Gen Z enter the workforce, at least professionally, you know, graduate, all that kind of stuff.
I'm curious to know how these like trends start, especially on TikTok. I've noticed that the more topics we've talked about on this podcast, have sort of come from TikTok, like quiet quitting or all these other things. So I'm curious to know. I mean, I'm wondering what the next thing's gonna be. I'm wondering what the next work-related topic is.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to
Yeah.
see what it is. I can't
Yeah.
even think about what it would be. To be honest, I didn't even think of that. Like, when I heard of lazy girl jobs, I was like, I
interesting.
wouldn't have thought, like, to talk about something like
Yeah.
this. I wouldn't have thought to, like, you know, come up with a term that describes, like, the way you work.
Yeah.
You know? So it is interesting. I'm excited to see. I'm hoping for great changes in the workforce and that employers will adapt because, you know, again, more and more Gen Z are entering the workforce, and, you know, there is people with great talent and great capabilities, but you've got to kind of reach them where they're at.
Yeah.
So that has been today's episode of the Growing Together podcast. Shout out to all those people who got lazy girl jobs. I don't know how you do it. I really don't. I just have a certain like, I don't know how to describe it, a certain mindset that I feel like haven't been able to ever change about work. I'm just very
Grinding.
grinded. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just in the grind. We hope you enjoyed. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. We really appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe, and just be here every Monday for another podcast. This has been Growing Together with me, Sunny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
We hope to see you again next week.
See you guys later.